Carno with us.
Political strategist. Good morning, Laura. Happy Valentine's Day.
Good morning, and to you too.
Wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the things going on up at the state capitol, where, I've said on this show, I've been impressed with the Republicans. I think some people said, this is going to be a boring session. Everybody's going to sit back, not do anything. But that has not turned out to be the case. And why don't you, because it gets confusing trying to follow, can you bring us up to speed on where some of the gun measures are?
Sure. So it's been very interesting because we have a divided legislature. So we've got a majority in the state Senate of Republicans, and the Democrats have the majority in the state House. And as we all remember from Schoolhouse Rock, it has to pass both chambers before it goes on to the governor. So if we don't have enough pro-gun people in a Democrat-controlled House, then Democrats who are pro-gun, then nothing's going to get even to the governor's desk. And so there have been numerous, looking for my list right now, there have been 5 pro-gun bills defeated already in Democrat-controlled House committees, 2 more that are going through the House that have not yet been scheduled in a committee. One would be for no background check for concealed carry holders when they subsequently purchase additional firearms, and the other one is allowing concealed carry in schools. The very interesting thing about that one is it's being run by Representative Tim Neville.
Mm-hmm.
He was a student at Columbine during the Columbine shooting, and he believes that if there had been teachers, administrators, et cetera, who were carrying concealed, that they could have stopped what had happened there. And then in the Republican-controlled Senate, there have been 2 bills that have already passed the Senate, the full Senate floor, and are heading over to the House to die, presumably. The Democrat Speaker, Dickie Lee Hullinghorst, has said that anything that comes from the Senate is going to die in the House, period, from a gun control standpoint, or a gun rights standpoint, I should say. With the exception of this is where I think it's going to get very interesting, and I just posted a blog about this at lauracarno.com. Senator Chris Holbert has sponsored a repeal of the magazine limitation. So you'll remember in 2013, we were limited to 15 rounds, and Senator Holbert is looking to repeal that. So why is that any different? We have 4 Democrat co-sponsors.
How did that come to be?
Right. So what's interesting, and I talk about this in my blog because most people are saying, I don't understand this, very much overshadowed in the 2013 gun debates, there were a number of pro-gun Democrats who said, not only does this infringe on the rights of my constituents, but it's not going to make anyone safer. It's not going to work. And so there are 3 of those people who are 3 of the 4 I just mentioned, and I detail who they are and where they're from, who voted against the 2013 gun control bills, namely this one, the magazine limitation. Some of them were okay with background checks, but we'll take what we can get. One of them, Carrie Donovan from Vail, and I'm going to repeat that, from Vail. She is a freshman, and she has on her website, I've got the quote in my blog, she says, these aren't going to make you safer. I would have voted against them. It's a big several paragraphs I quoted in my blog. And you read it and you say, I'm sorry, what? That's a Democrat. But if you look at her background, she's a rancher. She probably within the course of her business probably carried a pistol on her hip or had a rifle in her truck. So it's very interesting, again, from Vail. So it's that will be an interesting one to watch because I think the speaker is going to have some pressure on her because we've got 4 pro-gun Democrats who are co-sponsors of this bill.
Yeah, the one thing I want to check, you said Tim Neville was at Columbine. Tim's in his late 50s. Maybe it's his son.
Wrong Neville, Patrick Neville. Thank you very much.
I'm saying I know they may have held him back a little bit in one of those grades, but...
Well, and I think, so that one, that could pass. And I think that's the one, too, that sure, I mean, it's almost impossible to enforce. It's, I think there are a lot of people, and I personally think sometimes that the gun issue, I know at the legislature it gets broken down along party lines, but I think out there in the public, and I think the recall votes showed this, it's not really as party line of an issue as people may, or as as lawmakers may think.
You're absolutely right, and the recall in Pueblo of Democrat Senator Angela Herron, 4,000 Democrats voted yes to recall a Democrat state senator in a Democrat district. And so that just goes to tell you, in Pueblo, Democrats are very different than, let's say, Boulder Democrats. The area has a history of steel unions, for example, so they may be Democrats because of being union members, but don't take away their guns.
I think Boulder Democrats are a little different than a lot of people. What about, I wanted to ask you, too, because I've been watching this battle back and forth, and again, I applaud the Republicans there in terms of limiting the funding for the driver's licenses for illegal immigrants. Where does that all stand?
So that passed in the the Republican-controlled Senate. I'm going to say it was Thursday, and so it'll head over to the House. Again, with the divided legislature, and this is where people have to remember that elections have consequences, and if you didn't support the Republican in your area, and we don't have the Republicans don't have the majority in the state house, this is what happens. You're not going to be able to get your agenda implemented because it'll pass in one chamber and die in the next one.
Yeah, the hard part of it is so people understand. I mean, whether it's guns or something else, there may be rural Democrats who would vote for it, but the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate gets to send it to the committees that they control, and so it'll never get out of the committee, and they make sure that it goes to committees in which it reflects the majority sentiment of the particular body, and it just dies in committee and never gets to a general vote in the House or the Senate.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I've got a conversation going on Facebook right now. Feel free to friend me on Facebook or join into the conversation. And on Facebook, I'm Laura Carno. But the bill sponsor, Chris Holbert, is in there talking to people who have questions about this and where is it going next and where is it most important that I call. You don't need to call Chris Holbert. Tell him to vote for this. It's his bill he's voting for, he says. But feel free to weigh in on that conversation. But you're right. It's Speaker Hullinghorst, and she has said anything coming from the Senate from a gun control standpoint or gun rights standpoint, it's going to die. So it really is calling your Democrat state rep and saying, we don't want this thing to die. Please put pressure on Speaker Hullinghorst. To
put it somewhere where it at least get out to a vote. Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's to me, and that's politics where it doesn't even get to get a fair vote. Let me ask you one, and you may not be up to speed on this, but the bill, and I think it had bipartisan sponsorship, that Rhonda Fields and Polly Lawrence maybe were sponsoring on the making the public defender's office go figure have open records and talk about what's going on with that one.
Yeah, I am definitely up to speed on that one. That was a very good bill run by Polly Lawrence and Rhonda Fields. Again, bipartisan. We're all familiar with the Colorado Open Records Act, where we as citizens can go to any taxpayer-funded organization, agency, and say, I'd like to find out this information. It's our tax dollars. You report to us. We would like to know these things, whether it's an email conversation or what money was spent. The big exception is the Public Defender's Office, and this came to light because the public is not allowed to know any information on what the Public Defender's Office has spent on the Aurora shooting trial. And so it kind of brought up the question, why? Because they are publicly funded. They don't need to release attorney-client privileged emails.
Oh, but the Democrat or the Public Defender's Office claim that just knowing that information is attorney-client privilege, and everybody just laughed at that.
Right.
It was just kind of we're paying. It's not their money, and they also came up with the state, the judicial is looking into it. They're going to have some committee. And I must admit, today's Denver Post, and when Democrats lose the Denver Post, you know you're losing the argument. The Denver Post even this morning came out and said, no, they ought to make it available. But they won't. I think it lost in committee vote 7-6. Was it?
It lost on a party line vote, and I actually had gotten home just in time to hear, let's say, the last half hour of it, including the vote. And the committee chair, Representative Daniel Kagan, in his sort of closing remarks on why he was voting against it, just had this very angry tone about we don't know what information could be mistakenly released. And,
oh, good grief! Here's the thing. I mean, the district
attorneys all have to reveal it, and they're kind of like, well, why do they have to reveal it if it's just so?
I mean,
so
we're
special?
their clients, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, all they're looking at is, and here's what I think, and I'm just going to get a little bit on a high horse here. I think that they don't want anyone to have any idea how much money they spend to defend these death penalty cases.
I can tell you, and I have
not maybe billions, but I know, if you.
It's millions because they spent $2 million on the district attorney's basis. And I have friends in the public defender's office, including people who've headed the public defender's office. They love death penalty cases because you get to spend all. Usually you're just talking to scumbags and plea bargaining, and it's really disheartening in a lot of cases. But boy, a death penalty case is a lot of fun. So they pour everything and their mother into it. I mean, they throw everything they possibly can because it's a matter of kind of, one, it's fun to work on death penalty cases, and two, it just they get to terrorize the DAs because they throw so much at it. And they just don't want you to know. That's just all it comes down to it.
And to me, I think the reason I would want to know as a taxpayer is, by far, the most contact people are going to have with the public defender's office is, their main job is defending people who can't afford attorneys. And you got to wonder, well, if they have this budget, how is the money allocated? So am I getting, if I get a death penalty case, which is rare, you have 8 or 15 lawyers working on your case. And I've gone into court and you see the public defender's office come in and they, it's the first appearance and they've got this giant file and they look around. They've never even seen the client, haven't looked at the file. And, I just think that there should be some accountability in terms of, are they doing their real job there? Or is it just become simply a whole, it's sort of a training ground and a proving ground for death penalty cases? I can't believe, I don't know why Laura, maybe you can't explain it to me. Why is this a Democrat-Republican issue? Why would a Democrat not want people to know how tax dollars are being spent?
Right, and what's interesting is that the co-sponsor is a Democrat.
Right.
And she, if you'll remember, Rhonda Field's son was murdered. He was a witness in a death penalty case. And so this is very personal to her. So you can sort of see the differing lineup between what a rank-and-file Democrat might think about it and co-sponsor that bill versus what the Democrat leadership thinks. And that's who assigns the bills to whichever committee to have it live or die.
Yeah, I think the Democrats are getting killed on this one. I'm not that it's that high on the public scale, but the excuses are poor, they look poor, they don't care, of course, because it's just the way it goes, but they're losing the argument because they don't really have an argument.
No.
Right.
I mean, people in Colorado have approved the death penalty. So, and granted, that means the person gets a defense. I don't think anybody, at least I don't begrudge that. But I think I was surprised to find out that the only people in the universe in Colorado who are not subject to Open Records Act is the Public Defender's Office. So,
right. And there should be no other reason needed other than this is our money and we need to know how it's spent. It is our money.
Yeah, that's not how Democrats look at that.
So, it's their money, Laura. It's their money. What just anything else going on up there that I guess, one, you think is interesting, and two, you think might actually get passed?
I have a slight obsession with this ban on powdered alcohol bill.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I've also posted a whole lot about that as well. I don't like any bill that starts with the word ban or mandate or require, typically, because we're grown-ups and we can make our own choices. It's already passed, it has a Republican sponsor. It has passed the House, heading over to the Senate where it's finally obtained a Senate sponsor. But essentially, this is a product. It's not on the market yet. They're trying to pre-ban it. The liquor lobby is not interested in having this as competition. Essentially, it's a thing like freeze-dried food. You'd bring it on a backpacking trip because weight is of utmost importance. You get to the end of your hike, you pour some water into this pouch with the powder, you shake it up, you have yourself a cocktail. And I've got a blog on lauracarno.com about that as well. I don't like the notion of government officials telling me what I may or may not have. And if the market doesn't like the product when it hits, the guy goes out of business. That's great. But let the market decide what.
Well, what's
what
the
product
likelihood?
Why
they
would
want.
they ban? I mean, here we
Well,
have we have edible marijuana. What's the problem with it?
Yeah, thanks for noticing the irony of this happening in the state that passed legalized marijuana. The talking points, and by the way, these are national talking points. They're trying to ban this in every state in the country, and that they're using the same talking points, which tells me it's a national liquor lobby effort. But basically, it's about the children. Children could get this. They could snort it. They could put it on their Wheaties.
Sure.
And in the blog, I have the link to the inventor's website. It's called palcohol.com, really just the word alcohol with the letter P in front of it. And he has this 15-minute video that says, here are all of the things where they say it's dangerous. Let me debunk them all. And he goes through it very calmly and quietly. And I watched it, and I said, my goodness, this is no more dangerous than one of those little shots of alcohol you get on a plane, and those are more readily available, easier to stow.
Anybody's been down to the legislature. I used to lobby down there. Everything is about money. Somebody makes money, somebody loses money.
Right.
And then it's always about it's either this is good for small business or it's for children. It's one of the two, and it never is about that. So obviously, liquor industry see this as competitors.
Well, it is kind of funny to have the liquor industry standing up for children. Yeah, I mean, not that they're anti-children, but it's kind of like,
sure.
I can see nuns standing up for children. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you one thing about I mean, this leadership race for the chairman of the Republican Party is going wild. It's just going wild out there, and you can read all about it in Colorado Polls, which is sad because I mean that's a left-wing site and nobody knows who's behind it. Although Jason Salzman seems to be the main person these days. He actually signs some of the articles. The Republican side, we have Colorado Peak Politics, which used to be fun and interesting when I think Sean Mitchell ran it, although sub silencio also. But somebody's bought it now, and you might as well go to nothing because it's about nothing. But you can follow it, unfortunately, in the Democratic ones. But it's a battle royale with Cynthia Coffin, who's the Attorney General, urging Steve House to run, and then her husband, Congressman Coffin, opposing him, saying re-elect Ryan Call, and it's just an amazing fight.
Yeah, it's going crazy. And the Colorado Statesman just posted an article online about this too, so they're taking it from a little bit more centrist view, so to speak. But if folks aren't following it, I think that's a good place to go. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. So you've got the battle of the establishment versus the Liberty folks, and who's backing who. I thought that the Kaufman angle was absolutely fascinating.
You got to wonder.
Backing one guy, Congressman Kaufman backing another guy, and man, what does that household look like?
Well, it's either one of two things. Is they say, look, you go on one side, I'll go the other side, and we'll both,
we'll be covered.
We'll be covered, or they're screaming at each other. One of the two.
Right. It's a house divided in some manner. It would just be interesting to be a fly on the wall with those conversations. So interesting Valentine's Day for them.
Laura, listen, thank you for your time very much. Once again, where can people, if they want to follow you, friend you, where can they get hold of you?
Absolutely. So they can find both of these blogs at lauracarno.com. The powdered alcohol blog is called Crushing the American Dream, by the way. And, because there's this inventor who, puts his time and treasure into this and is being killed by the state legislatures. So lauracarno.com, and then on Facebook and Twitter, it's just my name, Laura Carno, and would love to connect with folks.
All right. Well, thank you for your time today. Appreciate it. Yep. Happy Valentine's Day. It's 7:20 here at 710 KNUS. We're back after this.